All right, we're here with our friend, Rich Goldberg, Rich Goldberg, I asked you to come on tonight because something terrible happened today when Biden, first of all, was trashing President Trump. But then the second part where he's talking about an Israel peace plan, which struck me as very weird, as he was telling people to pressure Israel, as he was condemning the coalition government in Israel, and as he was saying things that Netanyahu's never agreed to, like a permanent ceasefire and so forth. And he says he's working Qatar, a terrorist nation, backing Hamas, and Egypt, a military dictatorship. What am I to make of all this?
Mark, it was surreal to watch the President of the United States stand up and give a press conference when, by the way, the people of Israel were going into their Sabbath and could not respond, and declare that he was presenting what the Israeli proposal to Hamas looks like, that he supports, but urging Israel to accept its supposed own proposal and asking for help from, as you say, Hamas's terror sponsor state, Qatar, Egypt, to help them get to the table as if they're a legitimate actor in a negotiation and accept a deal that allows them to survive, and for the Israeli military to withdraw without actually dismantling Hamas in Gaza. Well, of course they're going to accept that deal. And lo and behold, moments after the president stopped speaking to lay out the Israeli surrender proposal that we still haven't heard much from the Israelis about, except a statement from the prime minister's office a couple hours later basically saying they don't agree with that in fact they have a proposal on the table that allows Israel to continue to go after Hamas, to destroy Hamas, but try to get the hostages back. Moments later, we heard Hamas endorse the plan. They said, wow, thank you, President Biden. Thank you for saying that Israel has to stop the war and end all hostilities and withdraw its military and allow us to survive. Well, of course they're celebrating. This is a gift to Hamas. And it's not just about Hamas, by the way. If you listen closely to the speech, he then says, and after we get the Israelis to stop all hostilities in Gaza and let Hamas survive, we're going to broker a deal where we pressure the Israelis to surrender to Hezbollah, that is 10 times the threat Hamas ever was, that's raining down missiles every day, to keep that threat on their border. While, of course, we know he keeps giving billions of dollars to Iran, the sponsor of all of this madness, all of this terrorism. For what? So he can cruise to re-election and appease a few thousand voters in Michigan that he thinks are the most important thing to him right now? It's crazy.
But what kind of a sinister move is it? He stabs them in the back on Shabbat. Shabbat, for people who don't know, is that time of the week when at least practicing Jews or people who recognize it stop doing actual work. And they have a late dinner, and for about 24 hours, they're focused solely on family. And so I looked at the clock when Biden did it, and it was exactly the moment that Shabbat began in Israel. So he does it during Shabbat in Israel, so the Israeli government is not even available for comment. He pushes it out on a Friday, what is a Friday night in Israel. His statement was so grotesquely, really incomprehensible, saying it's the Israeli plan. He said it 4 or 5 times, but now you need to pressure Israel to do it and pressure Hamas to accept it. Here's my theory, Rich Goldberg. He already worked it out through Qatar and Egypt with Hamas. The Hamas response was a formality. They already knew Hamas would accept this because they're Hamas's terms, aren't they?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, this is a Biden-Hamas pincer movement against Israel, where he rolls this out. I mean, you look at the president's X account, for anybody who wants to go on there, he puts out a statement saying, here is the Israeli proposal to Hamas. And it's an infographic with the White House logo on it. No, this isn't the Israeli proposal to Hamas, Mr. President. This is your proposal to Hamas that you're now trying to pressure the Israelis to accept, and calling on the world to pressure Israel to accept, so that they prematurely end operations against a terrorist organization. And I got to tell you, what really bugs me about all of this The fundamental failure here, the moral bankruptcy here, is that the president's entire speech is premised on the idea that Hamas is a peer. Hamas is a political organization, an entity.
And anything they sign will have meaning. Anything they sign is meaningless.
We learned nothing from October 7th. We learned nothing from the 8 months since then. Mike, we're just going to roll back the clock to October 6th, hand the keys to Gaza back to Hamas, make sure that the keys to Lebanon stay with Hezbollah, keep flooding the Islamic Republic of Iran with billions of dollars, and think we're going to get a different result?
But to treat an ally this way, to hoodwink, to bushwhack, however you want to put it, an ally, to claim that this is their plan when it's not, to do it when they're not available to even respond, to time it that way, these are very, as I say, I use the word sinister State Department, which is highly anti-Semitic, sinister Biden, who I believe is an anti-Semite, but that aside, where they've already worked it out between the parties. Hamas, and they're saying, yeah, we accept this, we're prepared to do this, so forth. They didn't come to that conclusion in 30 minutes. They've been working behind Israel's back. In fact, they've been working behind Congress's back. They've been working behind the back of the American people. He wants to claim he's got some great peace deal. He wants to force Netanyahu to sign it. If he can't force Netanyahu to sign it, he wants to force him out. His problem is Netanyahu's poll numbers are going up. His boy Gantz's numbers are going down. And so he decides, I better make this hit right now. And it'll make Israel the evil one. Israel the bad guy. Israel is obstructing the peace deal. Do I have this about right?
That all sounds right to me, and here's one other additional element for people to consider. Who issued a statement, a very lengthy statement, commending the president just shortly after that, besides Hamas, of course? Barack Obama.
Mm-hmm.
Obama is waiting, amazingly, with this long statement to push out and praise the president for this articulate, bold vision of peace to end the war and stop the suffering. You know, we know who's pulling the strings here. We know whose policy this actually is. We know he keeps calling Joe Biden and his team every night saying, hey, here's what you should be doing next. Here's how you pressure the Israelis. Here's how you appease the Iranians. Here's how you treat Hamas and Hezbollah as political organizations, not terrorist organizations. His fingerprints are all over this, and he's out of the shadows tonight. He put it out in writing.
It's unbelievable, this conspiracy of the, I'll say, the Israel Jew haters. That's what we have here. I mean, I've never seen anything like. Let me ask you this. If Joe Biden wins another 4 years, what will happen to the state of Israel?
Well, look what's happened right now. I mean, you have billions of dollars being pumped into the Iranians. And, of course, they want to expand that deal. They want to do a much bigger deal if they get reelected. That means billions of dollars more to spend on their terrorist infrastructure throughout the Middle East, more missiles, more terrorism. They're already approaching the nuclear threshold, which they will gladly cross when they realize there's nobody willing to stop them. That means that Israel is in existential danger. But so are we, by the way. This is a regime that chants death to America first, not death to Israel first. The missiles you saw launched against Israel a few weeks ago, they're trying to build much longer missiles than that. And when they're tipped with nuclear weapons, it's the east coast of the United States that's endangered.
Rich Goldberg, we see that Biden and Blinken have done a horrendous evil act in sabotaging the state of Israel while Israel is literally sleeping during the Sabbath, Shabbat, and is taken up with Hamas, the terrorist regime Qatar, and the military dictatorship in Egypt. And just horrendous. And you're right, this is just the first step. They made it fairly clear that they're going to push that two-state solution too. And I think if Biden has another 4 years after this, I think Israel's definitely threatened existentially, and not by its monstrous neighbors, but by this administration. Now, that said, what exactly is this administration doing to prevent Iran from getting these nuclear weapons you were talking about, putting them on their intercontinental ballistic missiles, which they've already developed, when you have Britain and France and other allies in Europe who want to rebuke Iran, who want to put sanctions on Iran. And I read, amazingly, from anonymous sources out of those countries that Biden and Blinken are lobbying them not to do it. Did I hear right? Did I read correctly?
That is correct. And by the way, it's not new. This has been happening for months now. It's not a surprise that the International Atomic Energy Agency, the UN's nuclear watchdog, where the United States is a board member, has not rebuked Iran for months upon months upon months, even as they advanced that nuclear program. The Director General of this agency has come forward every quarter and said, hey, everybody, really bad stuff happening here in Iran. Pretty worried about this nuclear program. It's kind of advancing to the point of no return here as far as how much nuclear material they're producing, how big their enrichment capacity has grown, the limitations they put on UN inspectors to see what they're doing. Is somebody going to step in here? And every time we've heard from European diplomats that Europe has been stronger than the United States. Who would ever thought the French and the Germans and the Brits were going to be more hawkish on Iran than Joe Biden? I mean, it's unbelievable. All they want to do, by the way, is pass what is relatively a harmless, nothing burger symbolic resolution at a UN agency, which, by the way, won't do very much. So let's not put a lot of stock in it. But it's the bare minimum you can do is just put out a statement from the board of governors of a UN agency that's the nuclear watchdog and say, Iran is in misconduct. It is conducting illicit nuclear activities. It must stop, or we will go to the next step of our political isolation, and we will consider other steps. Joe Biden won't even do that. He won't even sign off on a piece of paper. Of course he won't. He's sending billions of dollars to the regime, praying that they'll take the money and not make a nuclear weapon with it. That's our policy today. It is absolutely our policy. Missiles are raining down on the Red Sea against the U.S. Navy, against commercial vessels trying to stop shipping, all supplied by the Iranians. Our policy is to keep that organization that is funded and directed by Iran, the Houthis, off the terrorist organization list, keep pumping the Iranians with money to keep sending weapons to keep firing into the Red Sea. None of this makes sense.
It's insane. Now, let me ask you a question before we run out of time. The mindset or the psychology of a Biden and Blinken who treat Israel not as a sovereign nation with a free citizenry that elects its government, a sovereign nation that knows best and has to decide how to defend itself, a sovereign nation in which they're making demands for it to deliver 30% of its country, its ancestral homeland, Judea and Samaria, to the Palestinians, who obviously don't intend to live in peace regardless. What kind of insanity is that? Is that not, I'm just being honest, is that not an example of what I'm talking about, this kind of stereotype, this anti-Semitism? Well, it's the Jewish state. Well, they can't survive without us. Well, we have bigger ideas for the region, and we're bigger than Israel, and they rely on us, so we'll blackmail them, we'll threaten them, we'll bully them. You see my point?
There is a deeply held ideological belief inside this administration, from the president on down, that Israel is the problem in the Middle East, and in fact, in a large part for the world. What you see at the United Nations and their obsession with Israel and the Palestinians and a two-state solution and spending more time on Israel than any other country in the world at the UN, it's the same obsession that exists in the Obama-Biden ideology. And by the way, they wanted to reset the entire strategic paradigm of the Middle East after Donald Trump left office. By the way, the strategic paradigm that delivered the Abraham Accords, that actually delivered peace and put pressure on our enemies and helped our allies. They said, whoa, we can't make this about our enemies and standing up to them. We got to bring this back to our ideological, religious adherence to the fact that it's about the Palestinians and about a two-state solution and pressuring Israel. That's the core. That's the key here. And they've been doing that for 3.5 years. appeasing Iran, pressuring Israel, and they killed any chance of a true Saudi-Israel normalization deal along the way. They stopped any advance of the Abraham Accords along the way. And look what they've done instead. Set fire throughout the Middle East through their policies. It is absolutely in their core that they believe this stuff. And unless there is a change in administration and a change in personnel, it's not going to change the policy.
They view America the same way. The Constitution is only to be honored if they can achieve their mission, if they can empower themselves more. They embrace these people who hate America, hate the American founding. He didn't stand up to the Marxists and what I call the Hitler Youth on our college campuses. His administration has done almost nothing about it. And he is fundamentally transforming America. Our economic system, our sovereignty. He's fundamentally transforming, all in a negative way, our legal system, our political system. We're in a dire situation, really, if he wins, aren't we?
I would say so, the United States and our allies.
All right, my friend. Well, I appreciate you coming on this evening. Short notice. Take care of yourself, and thank you, and keep at it.
You too. Thanks, Mark.